presidential candidate, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. Senator Cruz, do you notice that every time you're on my show, it's right after you've received some good news? I don't know if this is an omen or not, but this brand new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll, for the first time, you're up 28 to 26 percentage points over Mr. Trump. I don't know. This is becoming a pattern here. You get good news and you come on the Mike Gallagher show.
Well, Mike, I think that's right. Maybe it's cause and effect. We ought to do your show more often. It seems you produce good things.
Well, congratulations. Of course, it's frustrating to me to hear people say, well, is this poll an outlier? I love people go to that outlier. They don't say that about any other poll that comes out, showing different numbers. This has got to be a real momentum builder for a Ted Cruz campaign that already has a great deal of momentum.
Well, this is the first national poll in many, many months that has shown anyone other than Donald Trump in first place. And I think this is the continuation of what has been building for a long, long time. You remember before Iowa a few weeks ago, all the pundits, all the pollsters said we could not win, we didn't have a chance, Donald Trump was going to win. And then election night, we saw record-shattering, historic turnout. Not only did we win, but we also won with a broad coalition, the old Reagan coalition. So we won conservatives, we won evangelicals, but we also won Reagan Democrats, and we won young people. And we ended up earning more votes than any Republican candidate in the history of the Iowa caucus. Mm-hmm. And that's very much the same trajectory that is continuing in this poll that we're seeing here on the ground in South Carolina and across the country. And I think the reason is people understand the stakes of this election could not be higher. And they don't want to gamble. They don't want to roll the dice and nominate someone that you don't know what the heck he's going to do. You don't know where he'll stand. You don't know who he'll listen to. I think the voters want a consistent conservative, someone who's been the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. With me, you know what you're going to get. I've spent my entire life as a conservative, a social conservative, a fiscal conservative, a national security conservative, and I've spent my whole life fighting to defend the Constitution and Bill of Rights, and I think that's why we're seeing the old Reagan coalition forming and uniting around our campaign.
Senator, let's talk. You mentioned evangelical Christians, and of course, a very important vote in South Carolina and around the country. In past elections, many evangelicals stayed home.
Sure.
I've had a lot of reporters ask me, and I did an interview this morning with the BBC and with NPR, and people are saying because they know I know South Carolina well, and there's a huge faith-based component to the voters of South Carolina, and the reporters are saying, how does a guy like Trump enjoy the kind of support he seems to be getting from evangelical Christians? Isn't a Ted Cruz or even a Marco Rubio a better fit for evangelical Christians? And frankly, Senator, your faith is an important part of your campaign. You've shared it with me personally and on the air. Everybody who knows you knows your spiritual path. Why can you help understand the evangelical vote, and as it applies not only to Ted Cruz, but perhaps to Donald Trump as well?
Well, look, sure. I mean, as you noted, I'm a Christian. My faith is an integral part of who I am. But we are working hard to campaign and earn the votes from everybody. We've had tremendous support. We've got over 350 pastors across the state of South Carolina that have signed up to support our campaign, to encourage their congregations to go out to the polls, to turn around the pattern you observed of so many Christians not showing up and voting. In 2012, 54 million evangelical Christians did not vote. More than half of us didn't vote in the 2012 election. And if we do that again, we'll lose this country. And so a lot of my time and energy has been focused on energizing and mobilizing and inspiring people of faith. Now, listen, Donald Trump, his support is not hard to figure out. People are ticked off at Washington. They're furious. And I understand exactly why. Washington has betrayed us. Both Democrats and career politicians on the Republican side have betrayed us. And Trump has a lot of noise, a lot of volume, a lot of hot rhetoric, and I understand that people who are mad at Washington, that's naturally attractive. But I think what we're seeing, Mike, is that as voters get closer to Election Day, they start studying the candidates more closely. They start looking at their records, because if you want someone who says they'll stand up to Washington, the natural question is, when have you ever stood up to Washington?
Right.
And, that is, if you listen to what Donald's actually saying, Donald's saying he'll go to Washington and be a deal maker. He'll cut deals with Democrats, and he will compromise. And it's, it's the reason Jimmy Carter recently endorsed Donald Trump. I mean, it was really a striking moment, Mike, where Jimmy Carter was over in England at the House of Lords. They asked him about the election. He said, between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, I would pick Donald Trump. This is Jimmy Carter speaking, and he said the reason is Trump is malleable. He has no fixed set of beliefs. We can work with him. We can get him to do what we want. He said Cruz is not malleable. He knows what he believes, and he will fight for it. And you know what? I'll say something that I've never said in any other context. I agree with Jimmy Carter. But that's why we're seeing conservatives, as they study the records, coming together behind us, because I don't think the voters want someone to cut more deals with Barack Obama and Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi to grow the debt, to take away our liberties, to weaken America. I think they want a strong, principled, consistent conservative.
Did you expect this campaign to take on the rhetorical level it's taken? You ran a campaign ad, I believe, that showed a video of Mr. Trump in his own words, and then he's apparently threatening to sue you over that. And some of us are scratching our heads saying, well, how do you sue over something that is a public record of what somebody said? There's the accusation you're lying, and even Marco Rubio has gotten involved in that sort of. Has that surprised you, Senator Cruz?
Oh, look, I always think it's unfortunate when candidates make the decision to go into the gutter and to engage in personal attacks. As you know, Mike, and you and I have been talking a long, long time on the air. Mm-hmm. My approach from day one in this campaign has been that if others engage in personal attacks, if others engage in insults, I'm not going to respond in kind. I haven't. You've never heard me go on air and start launching personal attacks at Donald Trump or Marco Rubio or anybody else.
Right.
Now, I do think policy is fair game. Focusing on differences among record, focusing on differences among vision and experience. That's what the voters of South Carolina and nationally deserve and expect. And
the Washington Post, Senator, writes today that you cannot afford a third place finish in South Carolina. You're sort of neck and neck in the polls with Marco Rubio. I always love these pronouncements from the media about what candidates can or can't afford. But can you talk about how important it is to do well here in South Carolina, and do you expect where do you expect to finish?
Oh, listen, the Washington Post has been writing stories in the New York Times and the mainstream media for every election that, if Ted doesn't do X, his campaign is over. They've been writing obituaries on this campaign from the day we launched it. I mean, look, the day we launched it, the New York Times said, Ted cannot win because the Washington elites despise him. So, look, what the Post said is nonsense. I hope and believe we'll do well here. Regardless, we have a national campaign, a deep base of support. And you want to see the breadth of the support. Not only did we win Iowa with the largest vote total any Republican has ever earned in the history of the Iowa caucus, but then just a week later, we finished a strong third place in New Hampshire, a much more moderate New England state that everyone said a conservative could not compete in and be competitive. That breadth of support, I hope and believe, will do well in South Carolina. But we have a national campaign. And I will tell you, Mike, the reason why I think our campaign is surging, why conservatives are uniting behind us. You look at the Saturday debate, I think there are really two issues that are front and center on the voters' mind. One, with the passing of Justice Scalia.
Correct.
Justice Scalia was a lion of the law. He was someone I knew personally for 20 years. He was an extraordinary conservative. And the court now hangs in the balance. This is not one branch of government. It is two that are at stake. Our basic constitutional rights, we are one justice away from losing the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. We are one justice away from losing our religious liberty. And I think the voters are looking at the individuals on that stage and asking, who do I know beyond a shadow of a doubt will nominate and fight to confirm principled conservative jurists? Because we've been burned too many times. We've had too many Republicans who don't care about the court, don't fight about the court, and who put liberals on the court. And I think that's a big reason.
And you've really done a magnificent job in conveying the need, the urgency of this Supreme Court. And and yet I pick up the papers and read online today. Here's a president, a commander in chief, who plans to go to Cuba, but he doesn't plan to attend Justice Scalia's funeral Saturday, which is just, I don't know about you, Senator, but stunning to me.
Sadly, it is par for the course. I don't know that there's anything President Obama can do at this point that surprises. Going to Cuba, I think, was always in his plan.
Yep.
If you look at his foreign policy nationally, he has alienated and abandoned our friends and allies. One of the first things he did when he became president was send the bust of Winston Churchill back to the United Kingdom. That was
Correct.
shameful.
It sure is.
If I am president, Winston Churchill is coming back to the Oval Office.
Good. But you look at Charles Lipson wrote over at Real Clear Politics. His decision, his refusal to attend Justice Scalia's funeral does more than just insult the memory of Scalia. It's a failure to perform a basic presidential duty. Do you agree with that?
Of course it is. Listen, Justice Scalia spent 3 decades on the court, transformed the direction of American law. As Ronald Reagan was to the presidency, so Justice Scalia was to the Supreme Court. But you know what? We saw something like this a couple of years ago, where President Obama refused to attend Margaret Thatcher's funeral.
Right.
Now, Margaret Thatcher, you want to talk about a historical figure that stood with America, that along with Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul were pivotal in winning the Cold War, defeating the Soviet Union. For the American president not to bother to attend was just disgraceful. And so, sadly, I'm not surprised that he won't go to Justice Scalia's funeral, because President Obama, and for that matter, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, they look down on you and me and Justice Scalia and conservatives as essentially the ignorant masses. We're in flyover country.
Right.
And Obama summed it up in his unguarded moment back in the 2008 election, where he described all of us as bitter and angry and clinging to our God and our guns.
Right.
And you know what? I'm not bitter, but we are angry, and he can't have either our God or our guns.
Senator Ted Cruz, you got a big event tonight, I know, in Greenville. I'm sure we'll see you there at the Bon Secours Wellness Arena. Mark Levin's group, the Conservative Review, hosting a conservative convention, and a whole bunch of great people, including my dear friend Sean Hannity. People in the upstate of South Carolina or all throughout the region can go to conservativereview.com for tickets. And Senator Cruz, I hope you know how grateful I always am to you for taking the time. You always answer the call and join us on the show, and it means a lot to our listeners and to me. And we wish you nothing but the best this week in South Carolina, and we're going to see you out on the campaign trail.
Well, Mike, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for being a voice for freedom. And if you want to see us in South Carolina, go to our website, tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. We're barnstorming the state, and conservatives come vote on Saturday. If conservatives stand together, we're going to have a very good day.
Safe travels. All the best, Senator Cruz. Thanks again for joining us. God bless.